So first up is Mark, who's going to share a little about Diana's childhood.
Hi, my name is Mark Moline. I'm one of Diane's three brothers. And first I'd like to say that Diane and I and our whole family had such a great childhood growing up. Many of you were a part of it. We grew up where we had close relatives, cousins, aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, friends from church, friends from school, friends from around the block. And I just want to let you know you're very precious to us. The birth order of us siblings was as follows. Norman was the firstborn. Then a year and a half later, Diana. Then a year and a half later, I was born. And then 4 years later, surprise, Steve was born. I didn't play a lot with Diane as a youngster. Most of the boys on the block that Steve and I played with were closer to Steve's age, and we probably didn't want an older girl joining in the games, and I'm sure the feelings were mutual. She did get us to play girl games once in a while in her room when we were allowed into her room. I was occasionally reminded that her room was off limits unless invited. And I still feel like I'm breaking the law when I go up and enter into that first room on the right, up the top of Mom's stairs. I do recall having lots of fun with Diane in the basement when we would invite a couple of friends from grade school to spend the night, and we would construct these intricate blanket and sheet-covered dwelling places, draping blankets over chairs and tables and other furniture, and create covered rooms and hallways that we would crawl through. And speaking of the basement, Diane and we all have spent many hours around that ping pong table that Dad built. Whether it was playing ping pong or eating a special meal with family and friends. I imagine there are a lot of you who can remember eating a meal at, around the ping pong table. I feel sorry that she was the only girl, no sister, but I also think that she got some preferential treatment. Like when we had to go before the judge, Mom or Dad, and it was our word against hers. She usually won. But there were times when she did have legitimate gripes. Like the time that she discovered the dart holes in the heads and bodies of the dolls that she kept in the basement. Yeah, the holes in the bodies represented misses. You couldn't really blame us, okay? There was the dartboard hanging on the wall with the darts, and not more than 4 feet away, a little crib filled with dolls. The temptation was just too great. My brother Steve and I shared a room and did a lot of palling around together. One of the things we liked to do really annoyed Diane. I can recall many times at the dinner table when Diane would complain to Mom and Dad, pleading with them to make Steve and me stop talking our baby talk that we would like to talk to each other. I recall a very scary incident when we were 9 or 10. It was Father's Day, and Dad took Norm, Diane, and me on a hike up into Van Tassel Canyon. Steve was too young to go at the time. We were pretty far into the canyon when we decided to hike up the side of the hill. Now, it started to get very steep, and we started slipping. And I was really afraid that we weren't going to make it. And so Dad went back and forth from Diane to me, helping us climb up a little bit and trying to keep us calm. And I remember calling out to Diane and asking if she was okay. And then she would call out and ask if I was okay as we slowly made our way to safety. Norm was 12. He was a big 12-year-old. I think he found his own way up, and he was fine. But that was a scary time for me. Diane set a very good example for me in high school. In fact, so good that in my freshman year, my history teacher, Mr. Smiley, took me aside and said, "Mark, your brother and sister always did such good work. What's the matter with you?" Yeah. I also remember a time when we were all on our way to Oregon on vacation, and Diane was driving, and Dad was reclining in the shotgun seat taking a nap from driving, and this cute guy passes us in a car. And Diane and he notice each other. And so before you know it, Diane is passing him. And that happened a few times. And just as Diane was about to pass this guy the third time, Dad, who she thought was sleeping through this, was reclining with his eyes half closed, and he said, "Cut it out, Diana." Diane did something for me that I'll always be grateful for. The Duarte Free Methodist Church was starting a youth group. Or I should say Diane, Maxine Sellers, and Earl Scamahorn, and Irene, I don't know who all else, were starting it. Being a shy loner, I wanted nothing to do with it. But Diane kept on me about coming with her to the meetings. So I finally gave in and started coming. I now look back on those years as some of the most formidable in my Christian life. I met my best friends there, and I will always believe that we prayed my folks back together. We prayed for them constantly. And by the way, that room we used for the youth group was in the same building that Diane would end up teaching the 7th grade in for Light and Life School. Diane came up to me one day as I was doing yard work or something out in front of in my front yard. Lynn and I were in the house on Sunset Avenue in Azusa, the one we bought from Lori and Mike. And she drove up and she was very excited. And she said, "This guy named Dave Gruber wants to marry me." She said, "He reminds me a lot of you. Do you think I should marry him?" What was I going to say? Diane was definitely less inhibited than the rest of us. She would always be coming up with crazy ideas. I would just shake my head and think, "You've got to be kidding." Then she'd go off and do them. Things like jumping out of airplanes, going to Israel and living in a kibbutz, riding her bicycle over the Rocky Mountains. At least she brought someone with her, almost got her killed. This leap before you look attitude may have seemed crazy to me, but it resulted in a lot of good. When a need presented itself, while I would probably be contemplating whether or not I should get involved, Diane would be out there helping. She was generous to a fault. It seemed like from watching her that when a need came up, she would never ask, "Can we afford to help?" She would just help. Our brother Norman was just telling me the other day how we could all benefit from more of the courage and focus Diane had on the things of God, things that will last for eternity. Our brother Steve was just telling me how Diane would always look after him in his younger years. He told me about a time when he was with Mom and Dad in their bedroom crying right after learning of their plans to divorce. Mom and Dad were disagreeing about something, and Diane came into the room and took Steve by the hand and said, "I'm going to take you somewhere." They drove off, and she told him that where they were going was a surprise. When they got close, Steve guessed where they were going, to the Rose Bowl Stadium. When they got there, Steve asked Diane if she knew how to get in. She said, "There's always a way in." Sure enough, they found a way in and ran up and down the football field a few times. She knew exactly what to do to help Steve get his mind off of what was going on at home. Steve also asked me to say this for him, but I think he speaks for all of us when he says, "I miss you, Diane. I wish there was a phone in heaven." I'm glad that Diane is now at home with her Savior, enjoying her eternal reward in heaven. And I pray that God will send special grace to help those of us she loved and cared for, especially Dave, Seth, Davida, and Ariana.
Let's go with Paula.